and welcome to TableTakes, presented by
Gen Con. We're your hosts, Emma, Christian, and Derek. Unfortunately, Tifa and Mike couldn't be with us today because they were eaten
by the Snowmageddon.
By the abominable snowman?
By the
You don't
snow.
believe?
I don't believe.
No, that's real. That's real. That's why the Robles are not here today.
Adorable snowman.
Yeah, well, I mean, if they're gonna get eaten, they're gonna get eaten by something adorable. Have you seen them? They're adorable.
Wait, isn't it Bigfoot here? Isn't that the thing?
I mean, I don't think he likes to be called that.
Oh, sorry.
We'll
I
give
don't
him
know.
the more scientific name of Steve.
No, Tifa and Mike are actually fine. they will be here
Don't
next
send
week. So
flowers.
I mean, you can send flowers to us because
We need them.
we need them, and it was just Valentine's Day, and that would be lovely. But yeah, so let's hop right into it with
I'm for
our
it.
headlines for the day. I will
And
be
Derek is
presenting-
joining us today.
Yes, our very special,
Hello again, everybody.
special, unique, once in a lifetime, but now twice in a lifetime.
Twice in a lifetime,
Yes,
yeah.
very excited to have Derek with us here today. All right, so Magic and D&D were rare bright spots in Hasbro's tough Q4.
Yeah.
That's the headline, at least.
That's the headline.
That's the headline. I think it's a little dark for what the actual topic is. Like, actually, everything's doing pretty good.
That's really the point of
Everything's
headlines, though.
pretty
You know, you bring them in with the tragedy, and then
Yeah.
you give them the comedy.
This one fact about D&D and Magic will shock you.
Click to find out more.
A rare bright spot. We might all collapse and never have any games ever again.
Yeah. But the story is that overall, Hasbro is down this last quarter
Yeah.
like 12%, which is a lot.
Yeah.
Especially coming off the Christmas season. People aren't buying toys the way they used to.
Yeah.
Gaming, on the other hand, is doing
Up.
better. It is doing much, much better.
Yeah.
Toys are in, or toys are out, games are in.
Yes.
That means Magic, D&D, anything that Hasbro puts out in that area has been going up as opposed to down.
Yeah. Well, also in some of the more traditional games as well. Monopoly, Jenga. So not just the hobby gaming, but gaming in general is booming.
Right.
Although it did seem that the pie faces speak out, and I think we're called out as ones that were down a little bit. So it's
I wonder why.
yeah. Well, it seems like those games were very novel games. They were very kind of attention grabbing when they came out.
Yeah.
And it seems like maybe kind of attention has shifted elsewhere.
Well-
But the big factor in Hasbro's decline seemed to be
not their games, but Toys R Us.
Yes.
Yeah, with Toys R Us closing this last year, I think retail just took a big hit.
And
toys-wise, I think part of the reason it's going down is not just because we don't have those toy stores anymore, but network television isn't a thing like it
Yeah.
used to be. When I was a kid, if there was a toy that I wanted for Christmas or a game,
Yeah.
but specifically toys, I saw that toy on TV, like on Saturday morning cartoons
Like
or.
every single day.
Every
Like, week after
single
week
day.
after
So
week,
I
it was
knew I wanted it. I
bombarding.
knew what to ask my mom for.
Yeah.
Now,
why would you be seeing the ads if you didn't want it?
exactly, they were showing them.
They know.
They were happening during those breaks where He-Man wasn't saving the world.
Yeah.
So I always knew what I wanted. I had that there all the time. Network television sold us toys for almost 50 years.
Yeah.
And with it going away, the only place that the kids are seeing these toys was at the toy stores.
Yeah.
Now the toy stores are gone. So it's a rough
But
year.
did you hear? Apparently, Toys R Us, I think, is being bought by the former CEO and might be coming back.
Coming
after it
back, I
goes
didn't hear
through
that, yeah.
bankruptcy.
And that's great because I think toy stores are important.
And I think the way it's been forever since I've actually been in a Toys R Us, but I have this memory of just this wonderland. Like as a child, you go in
I can
there.
still sing the song.
It's just
Yeah.
GameStop with rubber balls, really.
But I think kind of
Like coming to it as an adult, like you go into a game store as an adult, and there's like lots
of stuff. So like the game stores are the places for adults to hang out now.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can potentially reboot it with a little bit of that sensibility, like toys aren't just for kids anymore. So I think there's potentially space there.
We have event space.
And a lot of it is like a lot of those stores over the years declined. When I was a young man and they were and Toys R Us was a relatively new big chain store.
Yeah.
We'd go in there and that place looked like magic.
Oh.
Like here are all these giant walls. You
Like
walk
it
in
would
there.
be big. It's like
You walk in there and as an
sparkles
adult, 30 years later, and it looks like a dumpy storefront with a bunch of toys. in it.
Personally, I still love going to, like, whenever we go grocery shopping or whenever we go to like a department store, I always take that aisle down the G.I. Joe alley, just to be like,
Yeah, no, I still do that.
When I was a kid, I had a dream that I was going to open up a business that was going to offer kids the chance to come in and select which body parts they wanted built into a G.I. Joe, and it would be like bespoke artisanal G.I. Joe construction.
They kind of had that on the back of the.
I was convinced.
Yeah, I think the second series of G.I.
So like
Joe
a
had
tentacle
that
arm
figure that you
and
could
then
buy
like
off the back
a
of the.
machine gun arm.
Do you remember that?
You could
design your own figure on the back of the G.I. Joe box, but then you would never actually receive that figure if you sent
like
in for it.
In the Toy Story, I was absolutely that kid who had chopped up and recombined his toys, but I loved them and didn't blow them up.
Right, no. It's okay to kit bash your toys together as long as you love them.
Yep.
As long as you don't glue creepy doll heads.
It only makes you the
on
villain
and,
of
poke
one
out their
movie.
eyes. Moving along to a little bit of Magic the Gathering Arena specific news. So one single solitary card has been banned in one single solitary format, best of one, only on Magic the Gathering Arena.
Which is a format now?
Apparently, yeah. Apparently it's its very own
best
format.
of one compared to what?
Best of one compared to best of three, I guess is what the technical term for it, but any one of us who plays Magic is just that.
That's how you
knows
play.
it as that's how you play.
Best of three.
It's kind of a fascinating thing, really, because if you think about it, it's because it's too swingy just to play a single game. It's funny, right? Like Wizards had to come up with this format that protects the game against itself. Really.
Some sports have a similar thing. Like baseball. It's not just one match between two teams before they can move on to the playoffs.
But they play a series.
Football is very much each game is 100% important. It matters.
It's also much more physically taxing than say baseball.
Yeah. So, but different games have had kind of different formats and different lengths of play before any competitor is limited.
Yeah.
I like the idea of a best of one format a lot because it allows for more casual play and while still being somewhat competitive as a person.
Yeah, and that was a big thing too for Arena in particular. It's for Magic the Gathering Online. I don't know if they have a best of one. I'd have to double check on that, but that was a big pull for Arena. What got a lot of people in there? It's like I love Magic, but having have to play 3 games. I'm committed to the same opponent. I'm stuck here. Whereas in Arena, you can get in there, you can play a game in 5 minutes and be done. Go on to your next game. So it has
the benefit is that best of 3. Makes you feel that you didn't lose because of randomness.
Yes.
But I think best of one also has the benefit of that when you feel like you have that bad matchup against a player, you're only stuck with that bad matchup
and then
for a shorter period of time.
New opponent, please.
Yes.
Yeah. You can,
Next.
I lost because of random chance, but at least I'm not stuck in a longer match because of that.
But in this case, people are losing not because of random chance, but because of apparently one particular card.
Right, so let's talk about that card.
I would love to.
The card is Nexus of Fate. For those of you who don't know what the card is, it's 7 mana, 5 and 2 blue. Take an extra turn after this one. It is not discarded, so very particularly, it's shuffled back into your deck instead of going into your discard pile once it is cast. And probably most importantly of all, and why it was banned, is because it is instant speed. So you don't have to cast it in your main phase. You can cast it at literally any time.
Okay, so as only a casual Magic player.
Yes.
That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Why is it broken?
All right, so I've actually, my husband Phil really likes to play, shall we say, Jenkins Spice. And so I haven't been playing it myself, but I've been observing this because it is incredibly complex to pull off. One of the core things about playing it in Magic Arena is you have to hold control. So there's a bunch of little buttons you're pressing. It's kind of like running a spaceship is playing this card. So it's hold control, every single thing, tap my mana individually, wait for this thing to resolve. It's crazy complex.
Okay.
So what you're doing with this is usually in conjunction with Wilderness Reclamation that untaps all your lands at the end of your end step. So it's crazy because you can actually cast this on turn 4. You get your 4 lands out, tap them before the end of your turn, before Wilderness Reclamation goes off. Wilderness Reclamation resolves, all the mana is available again, tap it again, you have your 7 mana you need to cast it.
So it allows you to double tap your land.
Yes,
Which
double
is
tap your lands.
okay, when you put it like that, that's huge.
Yeah, and Wilderness Reclamation goes off in the end phase, so if Nexus of Fate wasn't an instant, you wouldn't be able to do this crazy combo, but because you can do it. So the funniest thing about this type of deck is your entire game is played in your end step. So it's not on your opponent's turns, not during your main phase. It's just like in your end step, like drawing some cards, trying to get another Nexus of Fate, untapping everything. It's bizarre. And basically, like, once you go off, your opponent never takes another turn. But the game might still go on for another 10, 15
Yeah,
minutes.
that sounds like it's not fun. Like to play against at all.
Yeah, I think it's
As somebody who plays,
I
I primarily play red burn decks. I'm just all about them.
Oh,
know?
yeah,
I just want to get it over with quickly because I know I'm probably going to lose.
Yeah.
That just sounds like I would never get to pull any cards off. And
Yeah. No, that's
just sit there and watch somebody beat me.
To be fair, though, like, the Nexus deck often can go off and you're never getting turns after turn 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
But the burn red decks in Arena nowadays
They're
are
pretty
killing
good.
you on turn 3 and 4.
Yeah. Just like those old Legacy decks used to. Good times.
So that's an interesting thing that people are saying about this ban is, it was obvious that it was, like, giving a lot of people a lot of pain and torture and sorrow. But other people are saying, it's like, okay, well, also, red hits me in the face, kills me in 3 turns, I'm not doing anything either. So I think Arena's in kind of an interesting place now with these decks, and I think the main takeaway is that they are willing to tune Arena to make it good for casual players, and also esports. Like, this is an important thing for, like, they want to be able to
Right, no, you can definitely go the esport route with that. I never even thought about that.
They announced huge esports plans.
Yeah,
Like
for
WizKids
Arena.
is pushing that very, very hard.
for
So
them.
it's curious to me how banning it in the best of 1 format. How does that same problem not end up translating to best of 3? Is it just because you are less likely to get the card each game?
Well, for best of 3, there's the sideboard comes into play. So
Okay.
that's the big
Got
thing
it.
of being able to tune against decks. Like, once you are able to, the tricky thing right now, if you're playing best of 1, is like, oh, I might get red smash face deck, or I might get Nexus of Fate. Like, having one deck with no sideboard, once you sideboard in, you're usually able to get
So
a
the
little
You can at least throw in a counter or two.
The key of best of 3 is you can lose that first game, see what you're dealing with, and then shut
Adjust.
it down.
Yes.
Okay.
Shut it down.
So Nexus of Fate, maybe it's not such a powerful card that has to be banned everywhere because there is an answer to it, but that answer can't be reliably deployed in time in a best of 1 format.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yeah. All right, but enough about Magic. I'm sure there's some people very
Hey, I give them
interested
credit
in
for
this.
fixing something on the fly while the game's still
Oh, yeah.
young. So I love that kind of stuff.
That is a really interesting thing to see how the meta of a game develops. Like, this is something that I've noticed as I've gotten into Warhammer, or that I've gotten into Kill Team, or as a new update for those come out, because those Warhammer has been gotten lots of facts that have changed the way the game is played over even the length of 8th edition.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to me to see how a meta will shift. And I know that people have been talking, I think you and Kristen on the Tuesday Magic stream
Yes.
both talked about how it was interesting to see the meta of what people are playing in Arena be slightly different than what people are playing in person.
Yes. Yeah.
How is it differed? I'm just curious because I haven't played any of the new edition paper-wise.
I'm not sure about all the details, but it seems like, and you can correct me because you played a lot more of this than me. Do you
Yeah.
so it seems like the Arena is a little bit more casual, and it's kind of finding out. So many people are coming into the game that when you have this huge rush of people coming and exploring the game and finding things they like, a meta hasn't emerged yet. Whereas physical Magic seems to be a little bit more mature.
Yeah,
so when people go,
the
to
meta's
store-
been around for almost 30 years now.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
it's just going and going and going. It changes, but it always grows.
And the other huge thing is for people who like to do deck construction is Arena just makes it so easy. You don't have to make your buy list and go to mocks or get the cards mailed to you. You can do it right away. Play the deck a few times, see that it's great or that it's terrible, and go to the next thing. So let's think.
I'm not allowed to have a credit card until the game goes.
I wonder how long it'll take for a link in Arena to be buy this deck physically.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't gone that route yet, but I imagine that would be hard on since they're not technically a retailer and they're a distributor.
Well,
maybe
They might be breaking their own rules to do it.
I don't know.
part
Maybe
of it,
someone could
there
do
is actually a little bad feelings around that because with there being MTGO, with there being Paper Magic, with there being Arena, people are feeling a little bit unhappy about having to buy the same card multiple times. And with looking to the future, and there might be other formats that might be mobile or Switch or whatever, people are concerned, am I going to have to buy my whole collection.
For every platform that you play it on, the answer should be yes.
Well, I mean, but there's other things like Hearthstone is the complete opposite, where I'm playing on my PC, I'm playing on my phone, I'm playing on my Xbox, maybe.
And it's all linked together. But
Yeah.
I mean, like as a consumer, that's how you want it to operate.
But one is the most popular trading card game in the entire world, and one of them is a new video game. Like they're different.
Hearthstone's up there.
Well, no, Hearthstone.
There are certainly.
I don't. Yeah, that's a different animal.
Yeah,
It was designed around that mechanic.
Yeah, there's certainly divides I think between physical and online. And like that's something that people have long been struggling figuring out. I mean, that's something that affects music sales and movie sales and video games and a wide variety of topics. I think there's a much narrower view of, do I have to buy it again on each digital platform I'm on? So it's going to be really interesting to see where they take Magic.
Yeah, well, one thing that is definitely not digital is I'm working to do Mike's transitions.
He would
He's got
be
his
proud of that smooth transition.
I like that. You even did this
All
while you did it.
yeah.
It worked.
Totally not digital is minis. In this case, WizKids is offering a summer smorgasbord, I believe is how that word is pronounced, of unpainted minis. I think we can all agree that the most exciting thing about this announcement is the turtles. Turtles,
I just found out about the turtles.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Christian's just finding out turtles are even a thing.
I'm really excited now for no reason at all.
I'm more of a Yuanti kind of guy.
They're Yuanti, we got the Tabaxi, the cat people. So lots of new ways to play.
It looks like a lot of these tied into Tomb of Annihilation and some of the big adventures that came out.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those Tabaxi were introduced kind of in there, I believe, or around there. Turtles were the charity package from Extra Life.
For Extra Life,
yeah.
Right.
But they were tied into that kind of jungle setting as well. The Yuanti are there. So there's not only the weird races, but there's also just a bunch more choices for kind of more traditional race class.
Yeah, and what interested me about that headline is they're unpainted. Like, I've always loved WizKids figures because I didn't have to do any work on them, being the lazy bastard that I am. But my wife, for example, loves to paint minis, and she loves the WizKids figures, but she basically just has to paint over them.
Yes, yeah.
So having this, it's very interesting to me.
But don't worry, you can still be a little bit lazy because they do come pre-primed.
Pre-primed, there you go.
So you can just crack them and paint.
So this is exciting. There's the painting. So if you do want them to be painted, you have to do that yourself. But it's so important for people. And working at Mox, I saw this a lot. People would come in and they're like, "I need my half-elf bard, but with a bow and arrow and a theremin instead of a lute playing thing." People are very
surprised
specific.
that they 3D printed a small theremin in that scale.
People are very specific about what they want their minis to look like. So this, being able to really embody your character is going to be really exciting for a lot of people. Okay, moving on to a couple of classic games. We were talking earlier about classics and how a lot of stuff's being rebooted, which is very exciting. In particular, we're getting games that are getting some fun new art. So specifically, Castles of Burgundy and Cabo from Bezier Games.
So they're getting new art.
Yes.
Did they need new art?
Yes.
So that's why they're getting new art.
I forget exactly how Shut Up and Sit Down put it, but something like a maths textbook vomited on a old tapestry from the 1500s was the way that they described the old.
Yeah, well, I think Castles
That's
of Burgundy...
practically my Twitter description of myself. So
Castles of Burgundy was, it's a very classic game.
Yeah.
But it was also a fairly dry Euro-y kind of game.
Yeah.
And a lot of those games came out with very similar art, or very subdued art, I guess.
Very, very classic.
Yeah. So it's really
shades of brown.
It's really interesting to see a lot of them reemerge. I'm personally just very happy that the classics are getting new additions, and not just being forgotten and having a new game come out as kind of a constant game treadmill. I really like going back and revisiting the old games to pull what was great about them forward. And
I pull Hungry Hippos out at least once a year.
There's a big championship at Gen Con every year for over 100 people, 200 people, something like that.
I love
Is it the big one now, or is it the little table?
No, it's the tabletop one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they have the.
I've seen them. I've seen those big ones. Someday.
Well, I think it's really fascinating that people care a lot more. I won't say they care more now about art, but in the past, like you kind of took what you could get, right?
Yep.
Like this is the games we got, this is what they look like, and you kind of just put up with it. Like it's a fun game. But nowadays, like people are, especially with the whole shelfies craze, you know, people really care about what their games look like.
The art sells the game now.
Yeah.
And the gameplay has already been tested at this point. People have played it. By the time that Kickstarter comes out, that art is selling the game if you're not familiar with it.
Well, that's the thing that I've mentioned to a lot of people when we talk about how the industry's changed or how play behaviors change. One of the things that I love now is it used to be if a game was good, you had to play it. Didn't matter if you liked about the theme. Didn't matter if you liked the art. Like there were only so many good games, so you played them all.
Right.
And on one hand, that's neat because you played them all, and you might have played things that you otherwise weren't super into. But I love now that we live in an era where there are so many good games that you can just be picky and be like, I'm not into that theme. Or the art, like I'm into that art, I'm not into that art. So I'm really happy that they're taking some of these classic things and you know, allowing them a kind of another opportunity in that space.
So many games you just can't play them. I mean, it's good but bad because, you know, someone's like, oh, have you played this game? Have you played this game? Have you played this game? Like, I can't play. How am I going to play all these games?
You can't play every game. It's true. Some of us have tried.
As much as my Kickstarter history will suggest otherwise, I have to agree with you.
Speaking about playing classic games.
Classic games?
Yes, or like classic IPs, I would say. The downed ATST, I really want that. AT-AT just like rolls off the tongue. Like ATST is
The ATST has never rolled off the tongue. We all love the AT-AT because we can just say it like
we do,
right.
But the ATST was the cool one we all wanted to drive around in town. It was the two-legged walker.
Right. No. Yeah. That's your.
No, I do like that.
The ATST was like the minivan.
That's
of
fair.
The thing. And then the ATST was like the sports car.
I always considered it like the Imperial moped.
Sure, okay. As a moped owner, I agree. It's very sexy.
So it combines terrain with scenario. So we were doing a little debate about whether this was the first terrain, official Fantasy Flight terrain that had come out for Star Wars Legion.
We think it is.
We're pretty sure.
We think it is.
So in the past, it seemed like if you wanted to do terrain for your scenarios, just kind of like, well, you're on your own.
Right.
Like figure it out. Like you probably got some old Warhammer stuff.
There were some really cool folks who had done the Mos Eisley kind of clay buildings.
Yes.
But I don't think they were official. Like I just haven't seen them in the store.
No, they weren't official because it didn't say Mos Eisley or anything. It was like. Dune dwelling.
Yep.
It's like,
or
oh
like
my gosh, totally non-infringing Star Wars.
It looks like somebody molded a mixing bowl and then threw some sand on it.
Yeah. But I think this is the first official terrain.
Yeah.
And the thing that was really cool to me, other than being like a kind of a neat mechanical thing, or, you know, it's a ruined ATST, was that it comes with the two scenarios that are linked together. So apparently you play one scenario that's relatively small scale. But then any units you lose in that scenario, you can't play in the scenario following it. Because it's like two scouting guys come here, two scouting teams come here, they see the ATSD, they fight over it a little bit, they call in
picturing like a Black Hawk
reinforcements.
Down situation.
Yeah.
So,
you know, so like it's neat to have some of that kind of stuff with it. Just because personally I love cracking open the box, throwing it down, and then having a scenario that uses that cool thing immediately.
Yeah, like that legacy-ish factor to it. So you have to make some more interesting choices about what you're doing. Cool. Well, the next one is one that I am very excited about. Anyone who knows my predilection for adorable things with faces that shouldn't have faces.
You brought show and tell.
Specifically, Gamewright games tend to be a big proponent of this sort of adorable style. Sushi Go, we have of course, the classic food with faces, set collecting, drafting
Classic
game.
food with faces. Vegans have been talking about that for years.
Yeah.
I think it means the faces no food, no, whatever.
But so Gameright's got a lot of very exciting announcements happening. It's
Such
our 25th
as?
Anniversary. Congratulations.
Congratulations to Gamewright.
It's a long time in this business.
Yeah. A lot of time to be putting out a lot of games, a lot of accessible games, a lot of great cooperative games like the Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert games, getting people into lots of different play styles that they might not have tried otherwise. So in celebration of their 25th anniversary, they're doing a lot of dice stuff. So I think we can safely say dice are in.
They're super
hot
in. They're so hot right now.
Oh, no, it's
so
a
hot
new
right now.
technology. I'm not sure that the community is really welcoming to dice yet.
Oh, so dice are basically cubes that are small and have number pips on the sides. And you can throw them, and they show up a random number between that one.
But not just cubes.
Wait, what?
Wait, there's more. Polyhedrals of all shapes and sizes.
I don't believe in those. They can't be
Two-sided
real.
dice, three-sided dice, 200-sided dice.
You know, two-sided dice, that's just a coin, right?
But no, it's like kind of it's like looks really okay. Fine. But yeah, so Sushi Go is getting a dice version. If you haven't looked the picture up online, you should because it's adorable. Sushi Roll,
Yep.
Get it? Like sushi roll.
Because dice.
Dice and yeah. I really.
I'm sure a lot
Kudos
of
to you, clever designers.
I'm sure a lot of people have pre-ordered it now just based on that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so it looks like they're refacing a couple of games that they've done before by using dice instead of cards.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Dice travel better. I'm
I
for it.
think the presumption is that they're taking the familiar IP and they're taking the expectation or trust that they're going to be relatively accessible, simple, the games that you can play with your family, and they're bringing them to a new game style. So
Yeah.
I don't think that it's just going to be, instead of drafting cards, you draft dice. Maybe it is, but I suspect that there might be a little more push your luck kind of rolling mechanics that tend to come with dice games like that.
That makes sense.
And they've done some great dice stuff in the past, like Quick, so I'm really excited to see the combination of the new dice versions of this, Rat-a-tat. Man, I always thought it was Rat-a-tat-cat. Now that I read it was like Rat-a-tat-tat-cat. Okay. Rat-a-tat-tat roll. Rat-a-tat roll. Doesn't roll off the tongue quite as well.
No.
But also dice
Despite the
versions
use
for
of the
that.
word roll.
All right, so next up on our agenda, Warhammer 40k Relic, Unearthed by WizKids. Is it Relic, Unearthed? Is that kind of, that was the headline, right?
Yep,
Though. They
yep.
definitely got that in there. An unearthed relic from times gone by.
They earn their paycheck that day.
So you were saying a little bit about the history of the Warhammer. So Warhammer 40k Relic was a thing based on the Talisman game system. Went away forever.
It was published by Fantasy Flight.
By Fantasy
when
Flight.
Fantasy Flight and Games Workshop were working together.
Yes.
And then that kind of partnership ended, and WizKids has kind of stepped into that role with Games Workshop. So it looks like they're bringing Relic back. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting is that it's based on Talisman, and we were just talking
about
last
Talisman.
week about how USAopoly is planning on bringing other adventure games using the Talisman system back as well. So
Taking your favorite IPs and putting them in, Talisman.
Yeah.
Like you do.
and putting on well-known, well-recognized mechanics, specifically from
Classically well-recognized mechanics.
well-recognized from Talisman. But I think it's interesting now because a lot of people, like designers, like, oh, I'm going to come up with something new, a new system, like everyone wants to do the new hotness. But there's a lot of people out there, coming into games or don't necessarily want to learn a whole new system every time they play. So building out on these really well-known mechanics and putting IPs on them, like the same IPs or new IPs, is a great way to get replayability from this stuff.
that's a tension that I think is very familiar with people who are role players. Because especially, I'm sure you're familiar, like when the D20 craze was, or Savage Worlds, or whatever else. There's a lot of groups who
I was on all those bandwagons.
Yeah, I think almost all of us were at one point. So a lot of those movements, a lot of groups will pick one system. They'll become very comfortable with that. It'll be their system. And so there's always that tension of when you're coming out with a new property or game, do you make it for the thing that people are already comfortable with so that they can just kind of pick it up and try it out?
Yeah.
Or do you make it for its own system that maybe is going to be more focused on what it wants to do? And people have tried different approaches, so it almost kind of seems like maybe board games are stepping further in that direction now too.
Yeah.
I like that Talisman is tried and true.
Yeah.
I think that that's great. And I think it also takes a lot of the gamble out of designing a game.
Oh, yeah.
When the rules are already there for you to make, it certainly takes a lot out of work on it. You can concentrate on just writing the flavor of it. Plus, if you do make a whole new game out of it, what if people don't like it?
Yeah.
What if they love the flavor? Well, I for that reason alone, I'm totally on board with this. Mixed on Talisman in general.
But But it's good. It's good for the industry and good for the people.
Yeah, mostly because I don't remember a lot of it. You know, it was one of the first kind of adventure-y.
Well, it sounds like it's your chance to dive right back in.
Yeah, it's now is the time to jump onto Talisman.
It has been around for a while, and I don't know if they're going to make some tweaks to it, because it's often with these systems, you know, there are some old things in there, like old design ideas that we kind of know don't work as much anymore.
Or just different expectations, too.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
Like, you know, at different times in history, we kind of want different things out of our games.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes that's high randomness. Sometimes it's shared control around the board, things like that.
Yeah.
There's different approaches, and, you know, fads or fashions come and go.
Right. Makes sense.
Winter is coming. Actually, it already came.
Yeah.
Killed Teeth and Mike.
That's right. We
No,
missed
not
them.
really. Don't go looking for them. They're fine. They're fine, really.
Don't go looking for them. You won't find them.
You won't find them. But it is actually in the form of a deluxe Game of Thrones LCG expansion. So we talked last week or the week before about deluxe LCG expansions. I think it was
L5R.
It was
L5R
Legends of
that had
Ranks.
the deluxe one.
Yep.
So this is another deluxe with 3 copies of each of the 52 cards, so making it a little easier so you don't have to buy the multiple sets if you want to play the game. What's interesting about this that we were talking about before the show is what happens next. Like Game of Thrones is coming to a close, at least the TV show. I'm sure there will be many, many more books in the series.
You know, I mean, we can hope, I suppose, but, you know, now that we've watched the TV show, we don't have to buy the books anymore.
Yeah.
Or,
right?
more importantly, we don't have to wait for the books anymore.
But it's
I'm not bitter.
I learned my lesson with Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
I will wait until they're all out.
I'm sorry,
and then
but
I
the
will
last
finish
books in those series were amazing because Brandon Sanderson is a genius.
It's like George R. R. Martin, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting to think, like, will the LCG end with the end of the TV show series? If there's no continuing content for them to draw from, are they still going to be able, like, are they going to take on the mantle? Are they going to build out the Game of Thrones universe?
Yeah, I think one of the things
what do
that
we
Martin
want
did
to
really
do?
well was he created a very big living world that has
Yes.
lots of potential for storytelling
Yeah.
and game playing in it long after that story is over.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is a very, very fully realized, well-built world, and I have to give him credit for that. Cause
Absolutely, but the thing I'm curious about is like I would really love to hear the fans of the game right now, who are playing the game right now, when the last season ends, what would they like to see come out for the LCG next? You know, like what kind of expansion would they want?
New Age of Dragons.
Would they want a whole new storyline? Would they want
New
to
characters?
Would they want to revisit it and maybe revise it again? Is that where you release a new edition? Do you release like a classic edition that kind of sets things in stone? That's a very interesting question because of the way LCGs work, and they don't have that same assumption that like Magic or another kind of randomized game has, where you just kind of you keep going to build your full collection.
Right.
What's the next step? I think that's a really interesting question to ask. So I would love to figure out what the fans of that game, what they want in 3 years.
We need to find some fans of that game, and we'll ask them.
Maybe just
I've only
becomes
played the board
a-
game for this. I've never played the card game before. I knew it existed, but I haven't gotten into it because the board game was so traumatizing.
I played it a couple times before
Traumatizing good?
its LCG format. I haven't played it since then.
Maybe it just becomes a DCG.
Being a fan, I'll probably pick it up at some point and give it a try.
Yeah.
No question there.
Rise of the, or a UCG, Undead card
An
game.
undead card game?
Yeah, dead card game, dies, comes back to life, resurrected.
I think you're thinking of the Necromancer game from last week where you make your friends.
Oh my gosh, yes, make your friends. So, Stranger Things D&D Starter Set officially licensed, or at least working with Wizards of the Coast. Before you get too excited or not excited, so there's
It's
a
okay
few,
to be excited.
You can be excited. There's been a few, like, quote-unquote Stranger Things, the role-playing game, Tales from the Loop, Kids on Bikes, that have
all
been...
unofficial stuff.
Yeah,
Just
unofficial stuff.
The same kind of
Yes.
ideas of
Not-
kids
totally
on
not
adventures.
infringing.
But
Yes.
this isn't that.
Yes. So this isn't you are playing as the Stranger Things kids. You're actually playing the game that the characters in Stranger Things are playing.
Yeah, it's essentially a reskinned D&D starter set.
Yes.
But it has the same adventure that they played in the Stranger Things series, at least in the first season, plus 2 minis, both of which are the Demogorgon.
Or Thessalhydra, or whatever they're
Right,
called.
or whatever they're calling it. And I
called
guess one of them is
Thessalhydra.
painted and the other one is unpainted. I just think it's a great way to bring more people into the hobby, honestly.
It's absolutely genius because at Mox, like after the whole D&D thing and Stranger Things happened, like we were flooded specifically by parents. So like, can you do the D&Ds for our kids? Like just make them do the D&D? I'm like, well, there's a bunch of stuff that you can like be the DM. They're like, yeah, but that's like
Stuff that I have to do.
complicated. But having something specifically branded like this to say like, yeah, sure, you want to do the thing that they do in Stranger Things, like here's the box.
Yeah.
Just being able to hand it, like have that touch point for people to access it.
People are curious. People are interested. They don't
Yes.
know anything about it. They just saw this show and now they're like, ooh, Dungeons and Dragons. Let's
And
give it a try.
they're real excited now too. I mean,
This is
people
a
are,
great way. If you don't want to just grab the random starter set and you're a huge Stranger Things fan, this is probably your set.
yeah, people are real excited about the new product. I think it's going to be really big.
I'll probably get it. I'm a big Stranger Things fan and I like swag.
Yeah, I haven't watched Stranger Things yet.
No, I
but
gathered that when
I'm-
we talked before.
Yeah. I'm
and-
kind of excited now. I know I should. Like, I should be watching it. And
You know, I think
quit.
everybody over a certain age should watch it, and everybody under a certain age should watch it. But there's this window of people who just don't need to see it.
Just don't watch it. Specifically you.
I'll give it a
Don't
watch.
watch it.
It's good. I like it.
Another announcement that I'm extremely excited for is KeyForge.
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 We talk about KeyForge a lot on this show.
KeyForge is really cool.
I think second only to Magic.
So KeyForge, the news is not that you can now actually buy KeyForge in stores, because I don't know if that's a thing yet, but you will soon
Someday.
probably be able to buy other KeyForge, because the age of Ascension is upon us.
So this is what is it? An expansion?
It's an expansion, which is weird for
Yeah,
KeyForge.
how does that
'cause-
work when
yeah.
all the decks are pre-constructed?
Right. So how does
Tell
that
us more.
how does it even work? So it's really cool. They're reusing some of the cards. They're doing 204 new cards. So the new decks will be a mix of kind of the new and the old cards. Some special cards will be like the Mavericks now that appear in a different house, where like this is a special card that isn't usually in Ascension, but now it is,
So
and now it's
there's
special.
7 houses, right?
Yes, yeah.
And now there's Mavericks outside those houses?
Mavericks are cards that just are in a different house than they usually are.
Oh, okay.
So some cards can be very powerful and broken if you can play them on, because you only play one house per turn. So if you can play a card like Anger or something that's like it's in a Mars card now, you can do some really cool, janky stuff.
Apparently, they're adding new mechanics too, like
Yes.
requiring you to play certain cards at certain times in your turn. Like you might have a card that has to be the first card you play.
Yes.
So it's a very interesting thing to me, because normally we're used to a card game expansion being like, here are some new cards, build your decks, have fun.
Yeah.
Whereas this, it almost doesn't seem like an expansion in the traditional sense.
Right.
It seems more like almost like it's just the game being released anew.
Yeah.
Because
Deluxe edition.
Well, because every time that you get stuff for KeyForge, you're just discovering each individual deck.
Right.
So now there's just more to discover. So
Well, in a game with a lot to discover, that's a pretty big claim.
yep.
You know?
Yeah.
Yep.
That
And
means-
that's the big part of it too. Like getting these new decks is such a fun thing. Like people go out and buy cases of these. They just want to
Right.
open all the decks.
I
Now
think-
you're gonna have a whole new world.
Yeah, I'm beginning to think that this game has wheels.
There-
You know, like yeah, no, I think it might be going somewhere.
I will say importantly though, one of the concerns when talking about future KeyForge expansions is whether or not all the old stuff was going to still be playable.
Right.
They're saying that it's still going to be completely compatible with the new stuff. So you got your old KeyForge deck, you got your new one, play them against each other. Should all be like, you know, as balanced as KeyForge ever was.
My question is that going to make it harder for them to do future expansions if they have to keep everything from previous sets?
I don't know. Well, because I don't think they have to keep everything from previous sets, because they could just not include cards in a new thing, like in a new set. But like,
Sure.
adding more cards just makes it less and less likely that you'll see two decks that are similar to each other.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it almost kind of incentivizes you to buy more decks the more stuff comes out, because they're going to be more divergent from each other.
Yeah, I know a lot of this game seems to be surrounded by incentivizing you to buy more decks, and I think that's a great business model because it makes me want to buy things.
From a design standpoint, it's interesting too, because when Magic comes out with a new set, it has to be balanced or considering how it's going to be used with all the previous sets.
Yeah.
Or if it's going to be used with the previous sets.
And this has to have that to some degree. But since you can't build your own deck, they don't have to worry about those combos necessarily being broken, other than the kind of inherent idea of KeyForge in that you might just get a deck that is crazy.
Yeah.
But because it's kind of baked into the assumption of buying that deck, I think there's maybe a little less concern about the new set being a power creep, just because it's kind of random and swingy to begin with.
Right.
And they can take out those cards. They can do their own bans, really. You know, they're just like, oh, we want to do this cool mechanic. Oh, it's broken with this mechanic. Get rid of that mechanic.
Yep.
You know, they have a lot of control about stuff. I would say, like, you know, 4 or 5 sets into the future, like, there could still be power creep within the set as a whole, and people might find, like, you know, the older cards are boring or it evolves.
Any card that lives past a certain point and has expansions coming to ends up with a little bit of power creep problem.
But I wouldn't be surprised if the Magic kind of block format ends up naturally emerging from these as they just stop including cards after a certain period of time.
Is that going to make those cards' value go up if they're not available anymore? Because that seems like the way that usually works.
I think
to
the
me.
internet wants that to happen.
Yeah.
Again, because you can't deck build.
Yeah. Then it's just like...
It's just a collector's item. It's not like you're like, I've got this and this is going to win the game for me because you can't use it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think they're really doing a consumable model with this. Like,
Oh,
you're
for
saying,
sure.
like, buy new decks, which means, like, maybe your old decks at some point won't be useful, but it's kind of okay. Especially if you're only paying $10 for a deck. It's I pay $10 every 6 months.
No, it's super cheap to buy into in that way. I love it. And plus, so much variety, you know? If I don't like this deck, I don't have to play it.
Yeah.
I can just get a different one.
Next. All right, last on our list of headlines today, new D&D adventure board game, Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mage.
Mad Mage.
The
Mad
Mad
Mage.
Mage. She's
The
very
Mad
angry
Mage.
or very
Oh, yeah.
crazy, depending on where you're from.
Yeah, not just regular mage.
Right.
You couldn't just have a boring vanilla mage.
Well, because it's because it ties into the 2
vanilla
hardcover
Magic is very
adventures that they
powerful.
just came out with.
Yeah.
There was Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and then Undermountain Dungeon of the Mad Mage, I think is what it was called.
Yeah.
But it's Undermountain. So this is the board game, the D&D adventure board game version of Undermountain.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get a big ass box, a bunch of minis. You're gonna have the modular tiles. You're gonna have the kind of the powers and heroes and all that kind of stuff, and a book of scenarios.
Yeah.
So.
And this is really cool. Like, we were talking about accessibility of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
Having recently started, or like just in the character creation phase for a new D&D campaign.
It's okay. Welcome to the family.
It's a lot, you know, and
D&D
that's...
Beyond, I'm telling you. I just started
Oh,
using
it's your
it.
best friend. If you're playing
Beyond.
D&D Beyond is the
Yeah,
way to go.
I had like the books, and I was like doing the math and stuff, and I was like, oh gosh.
That's how I do it because I have to do it that way.
Yeah.
But if I would have like started with having that D&D Beyond right there, I'd just be like, done. It's so good.
We can all agree, even with D&D Beyond, it can be, and you have to have like your DM set up everything. So having things like these board games, like the starter sets, like it makes, like you can do, you're saying it's pretty similar to like a simplified, a 4th edition rule set. So you can play the game, you can do the tactics, like have your characters shoot fireballs and
If you've
stuff.
got the people at the game table, but you don't have the dungeon master who's willing to run something, you could just throw this on and get your fix, basically.
Or a lot of times what you can do is you can use it to play for an hour or 2 as people are showing up, things like that. I mean, we played a lot, or my group played a lot of Curse of Strahd when it first came out. Because it was co-op, it was you know, a board game kind of experience that you could just focus on the tactical stuff. It was a lot of fun. And then all of the ones that have come out have been compatible with it, and have come with a big pile of minis. So it's kind of hard to say no to it.
At the very worst, you get a whole pile of minis to roleplay with.
And no
if that's your jam.
To the minis.
Yeah, I think it's like 42 minis in this one.
Ooh,
That's plenty.
that's a good number.
Even if you don't play the game, that's 42 minis.
just like put them up on your bookcase. Well, have them little action figures.
Or use them in your adventures.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there you go. I mean, you get the WizKids ones, or just go head straight to here and grab your minis from there.
After you paint
Dual
them.
purpose. All right, Bundle Boss.
All right,
Take us away.
bundles. That's right. We don't have a lot of time, but we are going to talk about bundles today. Hashtag Bundle Boss. All right, so no humble bundles this week. However, the bundle of holding has something called the Bundle for Two, which day after Valentine's Day, you might think it's a romantic thing, but it is not. Bundle for Two is just one player, one GM, couple hours of good old-fashioned RPG fun where you don't need a whole bunch of people. As a grown-up person who has grown-up friends who play games, it is very nice to not have to worry about 5 other people's work schedules. If you want to just play a role-playing game, this is a great way to do that. This the initial set comes with 3 different role-playing games, and obviously if you expand it, it comes with 3 more. We'll talk very briefly about each of them. First, Reflections. This is the one that interests me the most. I have not played it. I just read a bunch about it, and now I very much want to play it.
Sometimes the premise alone is enough to be like, yep, I'm in.
And the premise alone, because this is a samurai game, essentially, about 2 samurai who are dueling, right?
Interesting.
And it is the moment of the duel.
Yep, it is just about the duel.
It is, and it's not even about the whole duel. It's just about that last, Aijutsu moment of the duel where they draw and kill each other. And basically, these 2 players they start with that moment and then build their way back on how they got there. Kind of creating this story about how they ended up in this place and how this
How did they have to come kill each other?
Right.
In another life, we could have been brothers.
Right. We are not so different, you and I. One of the things that grabbed me about this was not only that cooperative storytelling element, which is obviously completely my jam, and the 2-player ease of it, but they don't just stop with just that moment, because that samurai moment is huge in my head. Growing up, loving those, loving samurai movies specifically.
Well,
watching
so
Kurosawa.
first off, there's a weight around when you draw. Samurais don't draw their swords. That's
Right.
If you don't know about samurais, that's an important thing.
But if you do, it's just like, oh yeah, that moment. It's that moment. And it doesn't just do that. So it plays that moment for the samurai, but if samurai is not your thing and that's not where you're going, they have scenarios for all sorts of different things, not just
I imagine
samurai.
like a Western gunfight.
Yeah, there's a sky pirates one. There's a gunslingers one. World War I fighter pilots. There's there's a rom-com one where it's 2 people at this moment of whatever their marriage. Yeah, and then you go and you work your way back to the meet cute.
Oh, okay.
And and of course pro wrestling, which that's my jam right there.
Nice.
So that's just the first game in this 6-game bundle. Second one, The Quiet Year, is a map-making game where you are basically playing a settlement, I guess, of some kind that has been ravaged by war and time, and now you have 1 year before this horrible winter event happens, and you have time to build that settlement. And how it works is everybody's turn, they're making a map. So at the end of this game, you have a relic that is a record of the entire game that you just played.
Yeah.
That's one I've actually played, and it's really, really fun. It's really, really good, and I love that you do end up with this artifact that you have produced from the game. It's really nice kind of melancholic storytelling. Very, very good. I know Marion, who's another a Gen Con staff member, that's one of her favorite games.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing we always bring to a convention, because you can play it with 2 people, but it's also just we want to role play, but we're really tired, so let's just kind of glide through this kind of thing, and we end up with this really fun story at the end.
And it doesn't take a lot of your time. You're not dedicating 5 hours to sitting down and making this map. This is a very quick game that can be played with 2 people, although not necessarily just 2 are necessary.
Nice.
Dirty Secrets. So this is the 3rd game. This one is kind of fun because it just reminds me of every show that my mom watched. Those late night soap operas on network soap operas. It's about you're a group of people in this small idyllic town, but everybody's got a dirty secret, and you're working together to uncover them through playing this investigator character. That's fun, and those are just the ones that are included with the initial buy-in to this bundle. Bonus. If you decide to go for the bonus, you get Cthulhu Confidential. Which
is great.
Yeah, that's the Gumshoe
like
system, right?
Yep.
You've played this before.
I've played Gumshoe. I haven't played Cthulhu Confidential. I have Cthulhu Confidential. And it's really just intriguing because it's a full-on Cthulhu story, but many of the source stories for Cthulhu Mythos stuff has one investigator not an adventuring party. So this kind of replicates that. You play like there's 3 like specific characters in there. You play like a reporter, I think a cop maybe, or an ex-cop, and then like a private eye in LA, New York, or Chicago, and they have like particular networks of contacts. But it's about like you as one character going through this horrible story. And I think the book has the character, the location, and then one particular adventure for that character kind of built for them.
So it has basically 3 scenarios, one for each character.
Yep. And then you can
cool.
certainly add more. I think they've come out with a supplement that has another adventure for each one. But it's a really interesting way to take the Call of Cthulhu experience, and particularly the story, the original source material, and translate that to a game.
Yeah, and price point is great. You know, this is a game that retails for $25 normally. You get it as part of the bundle. It's a great deal. What else comes? Oh, yes. Okay, an hour between dog and wolf. In this, it's another two-player game. One person plays a killer. The other person plays a very, very flawed hero who has to embrace their darkness in order to catch the killer. And they're, again, creating this story together. Very cool sounding. I have no idea how it's played, but I look forward to giving it a try. Also, the other thing that they included in the bonus is the one-on-one adventures, which are just super fun. Pathfinder, they're all Pathfinder, which, you know, is kind of my favorite role-playing system. So I had to mention it at least. But these are basically just little one-shot scenarios for your fighter, your monk, your thief. These are basic Pathfinder character classes. And it's a way for you to play with just one person and not feel weird.
Well, I love seeing that, because, you know, that gives you, when you're in a campaign, you're having a ton of fun, and, you know, you don't want to wait for the next month or the next 2 weeks for whatever your scheduled
the rest of your
thing
group is.
Yeah, like it's great to just be like, hey, let's go play an adventure over lunch. You know, like just you and I, let's do your sideboard adventure kind of thing. I love seeing games experiment with the format of players. Not just with the story games of who gets to be the GM or not, and sharing narrative control among players, but also just how many people does a role-playing game need to have?
Turns out 2.
I think Cthulhu Confidential was really interesting because it had a section that really talked about how role-playing in the one-on-one situation is different from the group. And they just flat out said that in all of their experience with their playtesters, it is an incredibly moving and intimate experience. Like, it is way more powerful than kind of a larger group experience, to the extent that they reminded people, like, hey, you know, it's going to be a little weirder, it's going to be more powerful. Yeah. Take it slow, you know, and just kind of be calm and you know, work through it.
I think that goes for any like one-on-one role-playing game scenario you do. It is so much more intense, especially if both people are super into the story. Those are some of my favorite sessions that I've ever had in all my years of gaming, because, you know, maybe they are just a side adventure for another group, or maybe it's that's what the campaign is. It's just the one-on-one, but those get intense. Those are the ones that make you cry if you're not careful, you know?
Yeah. Well, if you've ever been in a larger group session and your character has gone off to talk to the villain alone, and the rest of the group just kind of has to watch you, and you've had that moment where you've talked with the GM, like, imagine how that feels, but then that's the whole game. Like, if that felt good, try some of these out.
Nice. All right, so I don't have a ton of time left, but let's hit up the Kickstarter hit list with our Kickstarter queen,
a lot of headlines
Derek.
today.
Yeah, so Tifa would normally do this, but we'll try to do her proud in her absence.
You're our Kickstarter queen today. You do this.
Yes.
So, Munchkin Dungeon. I don't know if you have heard of a game called Munchkin.
Oh yeah, no.
You're familiar with it?
Maybe played it once or twice.
It might be just about everywhere.
I'm pretty sure I got product placement in it for Dorcas. So
yeah. So there's a Kickstarter for Munchkin Dungeon, which is basically a board game adventure version of Munchkin. It's going to have the same art. It's going to have the same kind of humor. It's going to have that same presence. I don't know how much of the take that element will have. I imagine
the other Munchkin board game that they had absolutely embraces that, you know, stab your friend, take his loot stuff.
I can't imagine it being Munchkin without that.
Yeah, it can't be Munchkin unless you're there to screw your friends over.
And since it's an adventure board game on Kickstarter, it has minis, of course. So, like, there's 3 days left on it. I would say that if you are a Munchkin fan,
just get it.
You at least check it out. Just because, like, I have a feeling that the minis are going to be enough to convince people, and then you'll have another way to love and interact with Munchkin.
Yeah.
Chocolatiers, I think at this point should have hours left.
Yeah, it
So-
should be
Yes.
Yeah.
I checked it this morning. It was at 5, so
Yes.
it's like it will still
Yep,
be going
yep.
for
It's probably like 2-3 hours at this point.
yeah.
So it looks like it's just kind of a family-friendly game of card drafting, set collection, pattern building, stuff like that.
Based on chocolate, I assume.
Yeah, I think
Different
chocolate
truffles
and sweets and
what you
stuff like that.
have. Yeah, okay.
But the reason it kind of popped up on my radar is it's from Daily Magic.
Yes.
Who did Valeria Card Kingdoms and stuff like that.
Okay.
So
Also, is a sweet local company
Yep, yep.
based in Seattle.
We do love our sweet local companies.
So Daily Magic has done a number of kind of really good, simple, solid, accessible games, and it seems like this might be the same kind of thing. So if you like chocolate, maybe check that out too.
Can you eat the pieces?
I'm gonna go with no, and there's
If
probably a
you
warning
can, I
on the
will.
box.
I will back it right now.
There.
How about this? You buy that game, you buy some chocolate, and then you eat the chocolate while playing the game.
It
That's
looks
probably
a little,
safer.
It looks a little cutesy for me to buy without actual chocolate involved. That's just me.
Okay, all right.
Discount Valentine's Day chocolate. Load up.
Yeah,
stock up.
I'm stopping at the Big Lots on the way home for that very reason. Peanut butter cups for days.
Speaking of eating things, though, there's another Kickstarter for Rival
I'm
Restaurants
hungry now.
that's got 3 days left. This one kind of popped up because you really have to see the chefs that are the characters that you play are absolutely ridiculous. It looks like you're kind of rushing around. You pick kind of a ridiculous chef.
Ooh, nice.
They get assigned a ridiculously stupid themed restaurant, and then they're given some recipes that they have to run around and try to buy all the ingredients for. And you have like a couple minutes to kind of trade ingredients around with other
Okay,
chefs
so
and
it's
stuff
real
like
time.
that. I think
Yes.
parts of it are real
Okay.
time. I think.
So it's like
Yeah.
Chopped the card game.
I guess yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I would play that.
Yeah.
I'll go into
So
that.
Weird. I wasn't into the chocolate and sweets one, but you was like, oh yeah, we get to be chefs. That sounds
Oh, yeah.
awesome.
yeah, like very very fun weirdo chefs. Another one that we've mentioned before that I just want to plug again because I love it so much is Shipwreck Arcana. We're just mentioning it because it has 4 days left. And just to remind everybody, that was the kind of very small form factor cooperative game that was like Mysterium meets a little bit of Hanabi and that kind of thing.
Also, you're all going to die at the end, right?
You're trying to avoid that. You're trying to
yes.
read the fates and communicate with each
But
other.
if I'm
to
bad
escape.
at games.
You, yeah, you'll die.
You'll die at the
I mean,
end.
that's most games, though, right?
But it's very much a game of communication, and it's a logic puzzle communication cooperative game. So
cool.
if those kind of things appeal to you, it's fantastic.
I do
And
like
then-
logic puzzles.
If you hate numbers,
There.
like it's one of those games where like I've shown it to people, and like 80% of people love it, and then the remaining people are like, "You made me do math, Derek. I do not want to do that."
No, man, I've been playing role-playing games for too long. That's just part of the game now.
Yeah. And it's 2 to 5 players. Plays well too, so
Yep,
it's
yep.
good.
So Sentinel Comics is another one we mentioned before.
Yep.
That has I think 7 days left. I think it will end like just before our show next week, something like that.
Right? Well,
So if you are into superheroes and role-playing games,
so into superheroes and role-playing games at the same time. So
Yep.
yes.
then you absolutely should check that out. And it's kind of continuing the venerable tradition of the Sentinels of the multiverse cooperative deck building game. So it's based off of that IP. And then we have Murder on the Cosmic Express, which is another 7 days left one.
Right. It is only a 5-minute game.
I think potentially.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
So I've played Mafia de Cuba.
Yep.
It's got a really fun form factor. I don't know how similar Murder on the Cosmic Express is, but for Mafia de Cuba, you actually have a cigar box that you pass around, and each person takes out like either a diamond or like a roll, and it's like a hidden roll game.
It's
and
remarkably
you're, like,
clever.
pulling things out of the box, and then the boss starts to question people. It can end instantly because the boss can like accuse the cop or something, and then the game
Yep.
is, and then they lose,
Yep.
and the game is over.
Yep.
So it can go very fast, but it plays very well with a lot of people, especially if you're like don't have a table to play at, or you just have like 9 or 10 people hanging around. So
Is there
it's a
enough
good
stuff in the
one.
box for everybody?
Yes.
Well, that's actually
There's
like,
extra
part of the
stuff.
point of
Yeah.
Mafia de Cuba is you have to take something. Like Mafia
Yeah.
de Cuba is a really, really interesting game if you like social deduction games and you want to play one that has a little bit of a prop or theatrical bent to it. Absolutely get this game because it is extremely cleverly kind of built and put together. The reason that it's similar to Murder on the Cosmic Express, though, is that they both seem to share an element where different players may end up with different ways that they win. Not in the sense of like just werewolf, where like the werewolves want to win, or the cursed guy wants to win if he gets lynched or whatever.
Right.
But
the thing eats everybody.
Yeah, but like Murder on the Cosmic Express and Mafia de Cuba have this thing where like there's the accomplice. The accomplice wins if the murderer wins.
Yeah.
Or there's the police officer, and he only wins if the murderer's caught, but other players will just win if they don't get killed. Or there's the decoy, who will win if they're accused of being the murderer and don't have the murder weapon.
No.
So like if they can goad the investigator into picking them when they don't have the murder weapon.
It's a bit of a long shot.
But I think in the game you don't necessarily know what the murder weapon is.
Ooh.
So like there's some interesting elements of, you know, each of the players has a different victory condition. And the investigator's trying to figure out who's what, but they can't just point at the person who looks suspicious, because that might be their victory.
It's almost always me.
And I think it's actually a pretty good deduction / role-playing game for people who aren't huge fans of traditional ones. In part, I'm not sure about this one, at least for Mafia de Cuba, you get to choose your role.
Yep.
So the fact that like you don't, because you know you might be dealt the mafia 10 times in a row, and you don't like being that person, or you think it's too boring being a citizen or whatever. So this is nice that you have some control over that, and that you have a little more options about how exactly you play. And like you said, it's not just calling out the suspicious person, which is something a lot of people aren't super fans of these deduction games, because they're just like, oh, you always pick on me. I just have that face.
That's me.
I just have that face that looks like...
Some of us are just kind of weaselly looking. There's nothing we can do about it.
I think it
Don't hate.
might be the beards.
Is that?
You see,
I think it's what it is.
I would see you as just being unreadable. That's the thing. Like, I wouldn't be able to tell, so it'd just be like, well...
Whenever we play Secret Hitler, everyone just immediately accuses me of being Hitler.
Wait, you play a game called Secret Hitler?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
That's it.
No judgment, just an observation. We're fine.
All right, so...
So those are all the Kickstarters that we wanted to mention that are ending in the next week. What time are we at?
We're in.
noon
It's 12:01.
now.
Okay.
Do you wanna call it?
I think we will save some more surprises for next week.
Yeah.
We have
got
plenty
tons of
more in
fun
store,
stuff.
plus whatever we come up with next week. So
And hopefully we'll be rejoined by Mike and Tifa.
Yes.
we did miss them. Good
This-
job today.
I think. Thank you very much. I
Move things
appreciate
right
it.
along. Very well done.
I.
That didn't
Move
work. Just hurt
things-
my neck. Oh god.
Wait, I just
Your
realized
face
I
long,
by
Mike.
far have the longest hair here.
There.
Oh yeah, easily.
Yeah. Yes, Tifa and Mike next week will hopefully be disgorged by
Oh yes. Hopefully the snowstorm will let go of them.
Yes. All right, I have been Emma Larkins. Everybody, let's talk about where we can find each other to discuss future topics on the interwebs.
Sure,
if so
yeah.
desired.
My name is Christian Doyle. You can find me at Crash Jackson on Twitter. Also, just Christian Doyle on the Facebooks, if that's the way that you're still doing things. I run I run a couple of games on the Zoe web channel. If you're looking for superheroes and role-playing games, I happen to have a show just about that. It's called Masters of the Metaverse on Monday nights. And DFA just came back on Saturday, so our big BattleTech drama is back on Saturday afternoons. I get to do my first episode of that tomorrow. I'm very, very excited. Big Stompy Robots. That's where you can find me right now.
All right, I'm Emma Larkins pretty much everywhere. Twitter is the big place where I like to talk to people. I'm also easing into my own game design stream stuff, so you can hit me up on Twitch at Emma Larkins as well.
And I am Derek Gooder. I am Frequent Beef pretty much everywhere. And feel free to drop me a line if you want to talk about something, or if you want to suggest something we should cover.
Cool. Thanks for joining us.
See you
Catch
next
you next
time.
time.